Hey everyone! I'll be setting up the month of February in my planner today, but before I get to that, I'd also like to flip through January and share with you how the first month went. For 2026, I'm using an A6 Hobonichi HON or Techo Original, and this is my only planner for this year, which is currently housing my plans, productivity trackers, as well as journal entries for memory keeping. Flipping to the first spread, which is this yearly overview spread, I'm really glad I have an area to jot down plans for different points in the year. However, I'm finding that I'm already running low on space for some months. To remedy that, I found that these Beverly Marumi sticky notes in the petite size fit very nicely in these boxes, and is a nice way to write down more plans when I run out of room like here in the month of February. Next are these vertical monthly logs that I've been using for indexing or like one line a day. I find that this has been a nice way to reflect on my days and highlight the most important event from each day. It's something that I started doing in my Hobonichi last year and wanted to carry it into this year. I don't have any future plans for 2027 just yet, so I haven't had a reason to use these sections yet. Next is the yearly tracker, and this is where I highlight the days of my period, write down my workouts, as well as my weight every day. Nothing too noteworthy in terms of this page, other than I enjoy seeing all of this information at a glance. Because only 1 month has passed so far, there really aren't any patterns that I can point out right now, but I'm curious to see how things change in the upcoming months. This was something that I really loved in my common planner last year and thought it was really helpful, so I wanted to have it again in my planner for this year. Now we move on to the monthly calendars. I thought January worked out exactly the way I wanted it to in terms of setup and usage. I enjoy seeing all of the different events happening throughout the month at a glance, so monthly calendar spreads like these are always very helpful for me. I thought that the sidebar worked perfectly for my monthly expense tracking that I like to do, but I currently have it covered up with some craft sticky notes, and I thought that there was still a good amount of room below the calendar for my monthly priorities or to-dos. Moving on to the habit trackers, again, no complaints. This was something that I also carried over from last year and have found it to be a very effortless but useful way for me to track my habits every day. By the way, in case you're curious on how I set up all of these spreads, I do have a full setup video that I'll link right here that you can check out. Next is my pen show savings tracker. This is something that I included specifically just for this year since I'm planning on going to my first pen show later this year. So to encourage me to save money but also have a budget, I thought that this would be a fun way to track that, and so far it has been going pretty well, I'd say. And then for my 30 while 30, these are 30 things that I want to do this year since I recently turned 30, and I've already been able to check off a few of the items, which has been very exciting. I tried a new dish, scallops specifically. I've had them before, but they weren't prepared very well, so I figured I'd try them again after a few years and from a different restaurant, and they were thankfully much better. I got a manicure and pedicure for my birthday, which was a wonderful treat from my husband. We baked an almond cake from scratch for my birthday as well, which was our very first time doing so, and it turned out very delicious. And I've acquired a new fountain pen as a gift for my birthday as well, which I plan on including in a video soon, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, so far I'm pretty excited for my progress with these 2 pages so far. I'm currently working on trying to complete a few more of these, so hopefully I'll have some more updates next month. The next page was the letter to myself that I wrote on December 29th. I wrote about my intention of just giving more grace to myself as well as others this year and moving forward. I want to focus on listening more to others instead of, just talking at each other, which I find to be the case with a lot of conversations these days, unfortunately. I want to learn and remember who to trust in my life, and just a few goals that I'd like to accomplish before the end of the year, such as home renovations, YouTube milestones, and visiting family. Now we're moving on to the January daily pages, which I've honestly been the most excited about. These have definitely been the newest adaptations to my planning routine since I've always preferred weekly spreads in my planners in the past. Before we move on to the daily pages though, for this blank page, this is where I included my media tracker. I wasn't sure how to set it up for January, so I just set it up like this. For February, I definitely want to switch it up to allow more room for music, since I typically listen to a larger variety of albums, songs, and playlists than anything else, which I'll work on later in the video. Once I fix that, I think that this has been a great spot for tracking what I am into at the time. Below the media tracker, I won't get around to filling this area until after January ends, but this is where I plan to include pictures from the month. I create a little collage on my phone and print it out using my HB Sprocket, so I'll cut them out and paste them all right here. Now we're on to the most exciting pages, which are the dailies. These have been so much fun to fill in every day. The A6 size, albeit quite small, is so easy to fill the entire page with hardly any effort, which I know may sound awful for some, especially if you're very busy or if you like to decorate or journal a lot, but as something to try and fill in every single day, sometimes all I have is a few minutes to fill in my planner, so keeping it bite-sized, approachable, and with few barriers of entry, sometimes a few minutes is all I need. Anyway, let me break down how I have been using these pages. They typically follow a similar layout, so starting at the top here where there are 5 boxes, this is where I like to write down any tasks related to my cats. I know it may sound a little silly for some that anyone would need an area like this to keep track of like feeding their cats or cleaning their boxes. For a long time, I didn't write these tasks down even though I did them. However, I just want to make a better effort to not only do these things for them, but also remember when the last time might have been for tasks that don't happen every single day, such as trimming their claws, brushing them, ordering their food, etc. Also, it just allows me to be more present with them and more conscious of spending time with them and doing these things with them. And because this top area is cat related, I've been liking to add a little cat sticker here since I have so many of them and want to use them. Moving on, at the top right here, this is where I write down what day I'm on in my cycle. This was something I started doing last year in my common planner and found it to be very helpful, especially for someone who has like irregular periods and cycles. I do have apps that track this on my phone, but if there's something that I can write down instead to prevent me from opening my phone and most likely getting distracted, I'd rather just write it down myself. And then in this section here, between the timeline and then kind of like this secret line is what they call it, this is where I write out my plans and tasks for the day. Sometimes if there are meetings or appointments at specific times, I'll try and write them next to the corresponding time, but I haven't been adhering too strictly to the timeline in this planner specifically. I've also still been keeping track of my intermittent fasting on the timeline here, similar to how I was doing it in my common planner last year. Basically, when I break it off, then that just means that I am ending my fast, and then this blank area in between is basically like the window in which I'm like consuming stuff, and then I resume my fast in the evening there. So for that, I've been using the Zebra Mildliner in the mild vermillion color. I found that this was a good match for the January color. For this larger section right of the secret line is where I do my journal entries. Similar to how I did them in my Hobonichi last year, I've been matching the color of my ink to the color of the month. I thought that it was a lot of fun last year and is a nice way to just add color to my planner, aside from my typical black gel pen for my plans. However, this year, I'm using a fountain pen for my journal entries instead of the gel pens that I used last year. The ink that I found to match the January color is Diamine Terracotta, for anyone that's interested. It was the closest color that I had in my collection anyway. I decided to switch from writing in print last year to cursive this year, just to switch things up. I also included the time that I sit down to start writing. It's always something I've done for as long as I can remember, and I just like the added context. I also draw a little star on the timeline to indicate the time I'm writing my journal entry to serve as a visual representation of when I sat down to journal. And lastly, I also decided to include my daily doodles or paintings now onto my daily pages. I used to keep them on a separate spread, typically in like a calendar layout, but I wanted to try something different this year and include them with my journal entries. Again, I think having all of this context for one day, all on the same page, really does something to my brain and helps me remember and visualize that day much better. Also, the addition of color. Another new thing this year is that I've started adding watercolor to my drawings, which has been a real big game changer actually. Although it's only been a month, I find that having all of these different elements on one page refreshes my memory on that specific day, and I can visualize and remember that specific moment much better. And then also throughout the month of January, then I basically just added a bunch of these stickers. It's the same roll of stickers that I use to decorate my calendar up here from Journalsay, so I'll go ahead and link that below. But yeah, I've just been pasting in these stickers to tie in the monthly theme and just add a little bit more visual interest to these pages, as well as if there's not already a lot of stuff going on. I do find that with the smaller pages, I don't use as many stickers from my like sticker collection anymore, aside from the ones that I mentioned that go along with the monthly theme. And so I am trying to find a way to incorporate those a little bit more. However, there are definitely some days where I just don't even include them at all, which is okay. I would much rather have room to do like my daily doodles as well as my journal entries and writing out my plans before I worry about adding in additional stickers to just visualize my tasks and what I did that day, basically, if that makes any sense. And I've just been really loving the addition of the watercolor. Like I said, it just provides so much more context and just adds a lot more perspective to the drawings, or paintings now rather, and just refreshes my memory a lot better than when they were just black and white doodles. Since I'm filming this on the 27th, you can see that this is basically how a page would look like before I've completely finished it. It's kind of just a work in progress, but I'm sure by the time that this video goes up, then it will be all filled in and very nice to look at. So these are the last few pages of January here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start setting up everything for February. Alright, so as for the February setup portion, I actually want to start with the February calendar, just because this is kind of the first area that would need to get set up. And then I'm reaching into my MU transfer stickers sticker book here, and I'm going to be using this set of transfer stickers, also from MU. And I forget the exact name of this one. I think it's like dried flowers and letters or something, but I'll put the exact name down in the description for anyone that's curious. So I think that this will be very beautiful for the month of February, especially just kind of like with Valentine's Day and having like florals and stuff, and also like letters. I think that that will be very fitting. So let's go ahead and start with that. Some supplies to help me apply the stickers onto the page will be this MU wooden applicator, a pair of scissors, and then some tweezers. So as much as I would love to use this large sticker somewhere on the monthly calendar, I think that it may have to wait until like a daily page, just because I feel like it is a little bit too big to fit anywhere on the calendar, and I don't want to cover up any actual February days. So I might have to go for something a little bit smaller. I typically like to try and cover up any days that aren't actually part of February, so it would really be like the majority of this top row here, and then also this last box down here. However, sometimes I don't mind covering up a little bit of the box if it's a day that is in the current month, just for artistic purposes, I suppose. But I think I will for sure use this sticker and this one down here. Because they are larger, I think that they'll look kind of nicely opposite of each other on each corner of the spread, but not be too overwhelming. And then I just went ahead and took a few more of the transfer stickers and scattered them throughout the calendar. There was one that was particularly interesting. I wanted to go ahead and layer the flower and the bottle that was included. I thought that that would layer very interestingly and look as if the flower had been placed inside of the bottle. I really love using these stickers, especially on Tomoe River paper. I just find that they blend into the page so seamlessly. They don't add any additional bulk, and this style specifically just looks so realistic and looks as if it's just something that someone like photographed and printed it out. So I think that this dried flowers one is just very beautiful and very perfect for February. As I mentioned earlier, I like to leave the sidebar pretty much blank so that I can do my monthly expense tracking, so that won't get filled up until February actually begins. And at this point I was definitely fighting with the sun since it was getting out of reach of my window. So unfortunately, if the lighting is starting to appear off, I do apologize for that. But here I'm just taking my trusty old Uniball One P gel pen to write in all of the events and appointments, birthdays, and other obligations that are going on for the month of February. I'm also taking a few of these dollar bill stickers that my sister had made for me and just using those to indicate my paydays. And then finally, below the calendar, I used my Tombow Fudenosuke hard tip brush pen to write out the to-do header for my monthly to-dos. And below that, I just added a few of my to-dos that I want to accomplish during the month of February. We have a few appointments that we need to attend this month. I also need to bring a snack for our on-site meeting for my full-time job, and also looking into our taxes and hopefully being able to file them before the end of the month. So now my February monthly calendar is all set up and ready to go. Let's go ahead and flip over to the habit trackers and set up for February as well. This one will be very simple. I do plan on just keeping the same habits as I did for January. So that is my morning routine, doing a workout, doing some sort of artistic habit, doing my journal entries, taking my vitamins, no spending, as well as my night routine. Alright, so now that that is all set up, let's go ahead and flip over to the February daily spreads. I'm just going to set up the media tracker on this page, and I'll probably just set up Sunday, February 1st, just because I found that since there's no like weekly spreads or anything like that, I kind of just like to plan a few days in advance. And because when I'm filming this, then it is Tuesday, January 27th, then February 1st will be this upcoming Sunday, so I don't want to plan too far in advance. I've been finding that I like to come in on Saturday and just plan the entire week ahead. So I think I'll go ahead and just set up these 2 pages for today. So for my media tracker, I decided to kind of switch things around a little bit. Like I mentioned earlier, I decided to put the TV shows and the books at the top next to the word February. I felt like since this area is just a little bit smaller than the rest of the page, this would be a good area to have my TV shows and books, since I find that I don't go through those as quickly as I do with music and movies. And then below that, I wrote down the headers for music and movies, and that way I just kind of have like an endless amount of space to write down any of the songs, albums, playlists that I listen to, as well as any of the movies that I watched. So long as I have enough space for kind of like that collage at the end of the month at the bottom. So I decided to add the larger sticker in this bottom left corner. I thought that that would look really nice and just kind of set the tone for the rest of the month with the monthly theme. And I think that it actually pairs quite nicely with the monthly color as well, since it's a softer and more muted brown. I also decided to add a few of the stickers onto the first daily page here. I typically like to add the stickers in first before I go in and kind of like write around it. I think that just creates a nice boundary and sections off the journal entry as well as the planning section from one another. And then I decided to add these color swatches to the bottom right just for some more visual interest. I went ahead and wrote the tasks for my cats that day, and I really love these stickers that my sister got for me from her trip to Japan. Unfortunately, I don't know what the brand is, but if any of you guys are familiar with these adorable cat stickers, I just love them so much. So please let us know if you happen to know what brand it is. But I decided to add this one, and then I also added the mortgage bill that will be coming out that day, and then just a few to-dos that I know of so far. So yeah, that basically does it for my January flip through as well as my February setup. I really hope that you guys enjoyed kind of like this style of video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know how your guys' planners have been working for you so far, and we can chat about it down below. I really appreciate hearing from you guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.